Yo, dudes, the Empire's pretty chill. Maybe you could, like, join it or something.
Hey everyone, Lucamus Prime here, so welcome to a brand new video of what I'm going to be doing, where today I'm going to be ranking every movie that I saw or last year that got released in 2022. So yeah, 2022 was definitely a pretty good year for quite a lot of movies, but unfortunately there were quite a few bad ones that I saw. And now it's time to rank them right here, right now. So I'm going to be listing the films in the order of how I ranked them from best to worst of last year, in my opinion. And I'm going to be naming them and giving them the score out of 10 because I saw a total of 46 films last year, guys, so I don't want to be here all day talking about them, so here we go. And so, in first place, guys, my favourite movie of last year was definitely, of course, Terror on the Prairie, and I give it a full-blown 10 out of 10. My second favourite was Black Adam, which I also give 10 out of 10 to, my favourite theatrical movie of last year. My third favourite was Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which I definitely also give 10 out of 10 to. My fourth favourite was Everything Everywhere All at Once, 10 out of 10. My fifth favourite was my favourite animated film of last year, which was Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. And I definitely give 10 out of 10 to that. My sixth favourite was The Northman, which I also give 10 out of 10 to. My seventh favourite was Jackass Forever, which I gave a 9.5 out of 10 to. My eighth favourite was The Batman, which I gave 9 out of 10 to. My ninth favourite was Top Gun Maverick, which I gave 9 out of 10 to. My 10th favourite was Enola Holmes 2, which I gave 9 out of 10 to. My 11th favourite was The Fabelmans, which I also gave 9 out of 10 to. My 12th favourite was Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank, which I gave 9 out of 10 to. My 13th favourite was The Man from Toronto, the Netflix film, which I gave 9 out of 10 to. My 14th favourite was Hustle, Adam Sandler's new live action film from last year, which I give 9 out of 10 to, which was a Netflix film. My 15th favourite was Day Shift, which I give 8.5 out of 10 to, the Netflix movie. My 16th favourite was the Netflix film Home Team, which I give 8.5 out of 10 to. My 17th favourite was a film starring Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans, which of course was The Grey Man, the Netflix film, which I give 8.5 out of 10 to. Couldn't stand Chris. My 18th favourite was one of my favourite musical or biopics of all time, which was Elvis, which I give 8 out of 10 to. My 19th favourite was The Bad Guys, the DreamWorks film, which definitely returned to form for a franchise, which I give 8 out of 10 to. Hope it gets sequels. My 20th favourite was DC League of Super Pets. Definitely a surprise for sure, but a welcome one, which I gave 8 out of 10 to. My 21st favourite was Bullet Train, which was also a very nice surprise to, which I really enjoyed. My 22nd favourite was The Lost City, once again a pretty nice surprise, which I gave 8 out of 10 to. My 23rd favourite was the Netflix film Spiderhead, starring Chris Hemsworth and Miles Teller, among others, which was also a very good movie. My 24th favourite was Minions, The Rise of Gru, which I gave 8 out of 10 to. Definitely a big surprise indeed. I thought it wasn't going to be good, but I actually really enjoyed it. And that's definitely a nice way for me to wrap up my journey with Despicable Me, because I'm not watching this planned fourth movie, because in my opinion was not needed. The second film perfectly wrapped up the story. Then my 25th favourite was the Netflix animated film The Sea Beast, which has my favourite voice, Waller Carl Urban. I give that film an 8 out of 10. Although I did kind of feel a bit some House of a Dragon a little bit. It's still a good film though. My 26th favourite was the Christmas movie Violent Night. Definitely the kind of movie you'd want, which is like a crossover between things like Home Alone and Die Hard and John Wick. Definitely a pretty fun movie. David Harbour was great as Santa. Give that 7.5 out of 10. My 27th favourite was the Amazon Prime movie All the Old Knives, which I give 7.5 out of 10 to. My 28th favourite was Scream, or Scream 2022, or Scream 5. I would call it Scream 5, because yeah, to avoid confusion. I give that 7.5 out of 10, and there was no way I'm watching the sixth film, because in my opinion, it's not needed. My 29th favourite was Jurassic World Dominion. It had negative reviews, but I actually really liked it, and definitely, in my opinion, a nice way to end the story. My 30th favourite would have to be Hocus Pocus 2, which I gave a 7 out of 10 to. Definitely a very nice sequel, which thankfully didn't ruin the characters. I mean, might not top the first one. The first one's a classic which can't be topped in my opinion, but this sequel was pretty good, nearly as good as the first film in my opinion, yeah. Very nice sequel, but thankfully didn't ruin the characters. Then my 31st favourite would have to be, of course, the Amazon Prime film The Contractor, which I gave 7 out of 10 to, all starring Chris Pine, who was in All the Old Knives. It was alright. Then my 32nd favourite would have to be the Netflix comedy film Me Time. Yeah, it was pretty alright. I give that 7 out of 10. Mark Wahlberg was pretty good in it, and the other cast members were good too. Then my 33rd favourite would have to be, of course, the video game adaptation of Uncharted, which was also alright, and as someone who's played the games recently, I think the games are way more superior though, but this film was alright for what it was. And my favourite scene in the film, of course, was definitely Nolan North's cameo. He always will battle, and Nathan Drake always been my favourite role of Nolan. Then my 34th favourite would have to be, of course, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which stars Nicolas Cage as a fictional version of himself, which I give a 7 out of 10 to, which was definitely a pretty good movie. Then my 35th favourite would have to be, of course, Sean Levi and Ryan Reynolds' next collaboration after Free Guy, which was The Adam Project, which I gave 7 out of 10 to. It was alright. Free Guy was much better, and Ryan Reynolds definitely needs to stop playing Deadpool these days. He needs to go back to doing dramatic roles, because yeah, it's getting pretty annoying how he's constantly playing Deadpool these days. He needs to do something new. And then unfortunately we get to the films which are either disappointments or terrible films in my opinion, so here we go. In 36th place, I'm going to go with what is the last installment of a very popular horror franchise, which of course is Halloween Ends, which I give a 6 out of 10 to. This was a disappointment in my opinion, but I saw it coming because we were warned about it, so I went into it not expecting much, and yeah, rightfully so, because it was a bit of a letdown. Michael Myers was wasted. I couldn't care less about the stuff involving Corey. I couldn't care less about it. The only best thing about it, in my opinion, was the final act, and that was probably about it, really. But yeah, I won't be watching anything Halloween after this, but they're not doing any more. There's no need. In 37th place, I'm going to go with a Sylvester Stallone film released onto Amazon, which was Samaritan, which I unfortunately give a 5 out of 10 to, because whilst Sly was the best part of it as his character, the film was a bit generic in my opinion. Didn't really like the villain that much. Yeah, wasn't good of a film in my opinion, pretty disappointing. Then in 38th place, I'm going to be going with a film starring Liam Neeson, which got released onto Amazon Prime, which was Memory. This was unfortunately once again a bit generic and was boring. Liam Neeson has unfortunately been in quite a few films with a very similar plot, really, and the same sort of, you know, story, really. And it's getting pretty annoying now, really, but he was still the best part of this film, in my opinion. Then in 39th place is going to be, unfortunately, as part of the bad films of this year for me, it's going to be an unnecessary sequel to which was 15 years way too late to a great fantasy film from 2007, which was Disenchanted. And that title couldn't be any more self-explanatory enough, because this film was a massive letdown, was not needed, and yeah, it felt more like a family drama than a fantasy film. It was ridiculous. So yeah, and I give it a 4 out of 10. Then in 40th place, in the big bad films this year, it's sadly going to be a Pixar movie, which I'm very sad about having to include, but this film was awful, and it killed my interest in Pixar, which of course was Turning Red, which in my opinion was garbage, more like turning off, because this film turned off my interest in Pixar. It killed it, because it was garbage, it went woke. The character was so unlikable, probably the worst Pixar protagonist of all time, who was a knockoff of the Hulk. And apart from James Hahn's character, every character in the film was so unlikable, and there's many inappropriate scenes which are unacceptable for a Pixar movie. Yeah, it was trash, and I give it a 4 out of 10. Screw this movie. Then in 41st place is unfortunately going to be for another Liam Neeson movie, which is very unfortunate indeed. But this film was trash in my opinion, which was Blacklight. Yeah, this film really sucked in my opinion. It was way too generic, and it was so boring, misleading as well. Liam Neeson was probably the only good thing about it, but everything else in my opinion was just rubbish. It was just rubbish, absolute trash in my opinion, and I give it a 3 out of 10. Then in 42nd place, guys, is going to be for the most recent installment of a popular horror franchise, which I don't like, with the exception of only 4 films, which of course is 2022's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was dumped onto Netflix, which I'm not surprised at, because, yeah, this film absolutely sucked. In my opinion, the worst one in the franchise since The Next Generation, which is the worst one I've ever seen in my life. Like, honestly, this franchise is dead, and this film is proof of that. Like, in my opinion, there's only 2 films in the canon timeline for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, only 2. And it should have ended with the 2nd film, because in the 2nd film, the villain Leatherface gets killed, so why should you do more after that? Because every TCM film after a 2nd film, apart from the remakes, in my opinion, has been awful. And yeah. So, and this one was definitely no exception, because it was trash in my opinion. Just an absolutely horrible movie. And it totally killed any interest I'd have in continuing this franchise. So yeah, I give this one a very bad 3 out of 10. Screw it all away. Then in 43rd place is going to unfortunately be, for a Sony animated film, guys, a totally unnecessary sequel in my opinion, which of course was Hotel Transylvania Transformania. I hated this sequel, guys. The 3rd film perfectly ended the story. There was no need to do a 4th one at all. This film was badly rushed, and getting rid of Adam Sandler and Kevin James was a very bad move, and made Count Dracula very unlikable, and the execution of, like, monsters becoming humans failed miserably. Like, you know, absolutely horrendous execution right there. Yeah, this was totally necessary, was not needed at all. The 3rd film truly ended the franchise. As far as I'm concerned, Hotel Transylvania is only a trilogy, so if I was to give this film a score out of 10, it's going to get, as I've said before, a very bad 3 out of 10. Screw it all away, it's garbage. Then in 44th place is going to be for a disaster movie by a director who I think should have stopped making films after his absolute stinker, which was Independence Day Resurgence, which of course is Moonfall. Oh my god, right? This film was trash, very generic. The characters made very dumb decisions. Donald Sutherland was also absolutely wasted because he only appeared in 1 scene for 2 minutes of screen time, despite appearing in the main cast of a movie. And it was just absolutely horrendous from start to finish. This film is proof that Roland Emmerich needs to stop making movies and retire, because this film was horrendous. May not have been as bad as Resurgence, because it thankfully was an unnecessary sequel that ruined an already great movie, but still not saying much because this film was trash, and I give it a very bad 2.5 out of 10. Then in 45th place is going to be for, unfortunately, a Marvel film, guys. I know it's not going to be an MCU film because I stopped watching MCU after Spider-Man No Way Home. This time it's going to be for, unfortunately, part of the Sony films in Marvel, which of course is none other than Morbius, or as I call it, Odious, because this film was garbage. All those years of delays were all for nothing. This film was boring. There was way too many rewrites and way too many edits and all that, which were added in at the last minute, and the credit scenes didn't make a single amount of sense at all, and they made the impactful ending of Spider-Man No Way Home absolutely pointless and ruined it, because it made no sense whatsoever and just ruined it. And it totally killed my interest in watching any more of these Sony films after Venom 3, and that's it. I'm not going to watch anything after Venom 3 in the Sony Marvel movies, because, yeah, this film totally killed my interest, so, yeah, screw it all the way. I give it a very bad 2 out of 10. And with that, we now get down to what is, in my opinion, the absolute worst film of 2022 for me, which, of course, is going to be for an animated film, which was dumped onto D-, and it's for a franchise which should have ended, in my opinion, with a 3rd movie, which of course is none other than The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. This was easily the worst film of 2022 for me. I absolutely despise it with a burning passion. The other thing about it, in my opinion, was Simon Pegg as Buck, but the recasts were terrible, in my opinion, for the characters. The story was boring, didn't make a single amount of sense, and the animation was horrible to watch. It looked like a PS3 game's cutscenes. And the first Ice Age film's animation was way better than this, which is saying so, because it's 20 years before this one. So, yeah. This film was trash. It shouldn't have been in the first place. Ice Age 3, as far as I'm concerned, is the true end of Ice Age, and that's it, really. this film's so bad it makes the fourth and fifth film look like a masterpiece in comparison, which is saying only because they're not even good films in my opinion. But yeah, this film is garbage, worst film of 2022 for me, and I give it a very bad 1 out of 10. So yeah, screw it all away. So, there you have it, guys. That is my ranking of 2022's movie that I watched. So yeah, a lot of films, some of them were unfortunately bad, but many of them were still great though, nonetheless. So yeah, hopefully in 2023 there'll be great films for me to watch, which I'm definitely looking forward to, and I hope it'll be nice to see indeed. So guys, this is me doing my ranking of the films I saw which were released in 2022. So you know drill, guys. Be sure to give this video a like. Also, be sure to let us know in the comments what films you saw in 2022, how you'd rank them in your opinion. Let them in the comments below. Also, be sure to join Team Prime by pressing subscribe and visit in the future. If you would like to be a member, you can only piece of lads or you can leave a description, and I'll see you all later.